Hello, and welcome to the Lee Enochs Show, America's most controversial podcast. On today's episode, Lee brings a special guest into the studio. What's going on in the world today, Lee?
Well, it's my great privilege to have Stephen Moitz, the president of the Young Conservatives of Texas, in the studio today. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, pleasure to be here.
But before we get into that, we got to talk about sports with Ryan. Ryan is the host or one of the co-hosts of the Main Event podcast here at UNT. I don't think I've met a guy that knows more about sports than Ryan. I asked him intricate questions. I mean, I'm not saying I know a lot about sports, but I ask questions. At least I think I can at least converse in the sports world. And this guy answers intricate questions about every aspect of sports. And so I've got to ask you a couple questions.
Sure. I am the lead watcher of water polo and handball in Denton County. So,
So the Tampa Bay Lightning, can they come back and beat Colorado in the Stanley Cup Finals?
well, they can, but the 90s Stars fan in me hates the Avalanche, but the current Stars fan in me hates the Lightning because, they knocked us out 2 years ago from the finals. And then back in the 90s, the Avalanche and the Stars were big rivals in the, I believe it was the Pacific Division back then when the Stars used to have to play. Like, they would play Anaheim and Colorado, and the games were like 9 o'clock start times when it was away games. It was terrible. But yeah, the 90s Avalanche teams with Joe Sakic and Patrick Waugh and Peter Forsberg and all these really great players, hated them as a Stars fan. A big rivalry. Not nearly as big as Stars Red Wings. So I'm conflicted inside about who I want to win. But I do think that the Lightning have a chance to three-peat for the first time since the Islanders back in 84. They won 4 straight from 1980 to 1984.
Didn't Edmonton win 4 straight or 3 straight? And I thought it was Mike Bossy, by the way, was an incredible
I think they
player.
went 3 times, but I don't think they won 3 times.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this would be the first time a team has won 3 straight since the Islanders.
So this is, my older brother was a hockey maniac, so I have no right really to speak about this, but I just have some basic knowledge of hockey. I think the way it went down was the Montreal team, Montreal Canadiens, won like 3 in a row, and then New York Islanders won 4 in a row, and then Edmonton might have won. At least they went 4 times in a row, but they won 3. And but anyways, Shotani last night hits 2 home runs and has a sacrifice fly in the 11th inning, and the Angels still lose to Kansas City Royals.
The bullpen pitching has been terrible for the Angels, but I mean there's a reason that he's got a whole new rule named after him. He is an absolute monster, and there's a reason he was the MVP last year. So
Shotani, if people don't know about this, is the first player since Babe Ruth to basically be a viable pitcher and hitter.
Yep.
And he won the MVP last year. Incredibly awesome pitcher. Throws 100 miles an hour. The guy's a freak of nature because the guy runs like a 4.3, 4.4, 40.
Well, now what you're going to see from the younger crowds too, and a lot of college, it's going to go up through college as well. Now that there's a viable rule for the majors to have the pitcher player, because before it was like, you don't want your pitcher to hit because unless you were in the National League, if you were in the American League, you didn't need your pitchers to hit. There was no hitting practice because you had a designated hitter. Now with the universal designated hitter and the pitchers being able to bat for themselves as well as a designated hitter, you're going to see a lot more younger players start to put a focus on hitting and pitching. And eventually, it won't be for a little bit because the rule's relatively new, but I'd say within the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see a lot more player pitchers, like maybe not to the success of Shohei Ohtani, because like you said, he is just a freak of nature in terms of athleticism, what he can do. But you're going to see a lot more pitchers that can hit and are doing both pitching and hitting.
Anyways, I want to give a plug to Ryan, who's co-hosts the Main Event Sportscast on Fridays. Ryan,
right now we do it on Fridays on Zoom, and then I upload it usually on like Monday. But yeah, it's usually dated on Fridays.
Well, guys, we're in the studio today with Stephen Moitz, the president of the Young Conservatives of Texas. I got a chance to meet Stephen earlier in the semester. I think January or March, or something of that nature. Not too long before this controversial event that took place on campus. Steven's a real gifted guy. It's clear that you have law school written all over you. Steven, tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into some of the controversies that you faced on campus.
Yeah, well, I just want to say thank you so much for having me here today. It's a real honor and pleasure to get to come on the show, and I'm really glad to be here. Yeah, so my name is Stephen Moitz. I'm the current chairman of the YCT, Young Conservatives of Texas chapter here at UNT. I've been going to UNT for quite some time now. I'm a senior. Yeah, and I've always lived in the area. So I actually was born and raised in Carrollton, Texas. I went to high school there, middle school, elementary. It's basically where I'm from. That's where my family's at. Always been down here in Texas and in the Denton County area. I'm studying political science. I'm doing a minor in criminal justice and pursuing a certificate in legal studies. You're absolutely right. I got law school written all over me, I guess. That or I don't know what the heck I'm doing. So
You got to study for the LSAT.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that's a fun process, I tell you.
You know, some people don't support Ted Cruz on UNT campus, but one thing I got a chance to earn my master's degree at Princeton Theological Seminary, and I got a chance to study a little bit political science at the PhD level at Princeton University. And I got a chance to look at Ted Cruz's senior thesis that he typed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got a chance. It's in library, highly secure library at Princeton University, and he studied under the conservative legal scholar Robert George at Princeton. And I've never seen a better senior thesis than Ted Cruz's. He wrote it on the Constitution, and he scored a perfect LSAT and went to Harvard Law School. He was the two-time NCAA debate champion at Princeton. Yeah, I ran into a guy, very progressive guy, who said to me, you know, Ted Cruz is an idiot, but Ted Cruz is a brilliant scholar.
Yeah.
And he won, as Solicitor General of the state of Texas, won 3 U.S. Supreme Court cases for the state of Texas on free speech and other issues. And so if you really want to go to law school, my friend, you're going to have to really study for the LSAT.
It's very true. It's very true. As many have told me. Yeah.
And the LSAT is awaiting you, my friend. And
yeah.
But anyways, let's get into some of the events. The reason why I had you on the show is the issue of free speech on college campuses. All across America, conservatives are being repressed, suppressed, and discriminated against, I believe, on college campuses and secular college campuses. And your group in particular here at UNT has been, there have been students and others from the community who have called for your banning.
Yeah.
Due to an event that took place in March. I think it was March 2nd. Now, in a real weird twist of fate, I think a day before the event, I ran into Stephen in the library, and I knew what was going to happen. Stephen, I said, man, a lot of outside groups, Antifa type kind of groups and stuff are going to come on campus, and they're going to shout down the speaker. I guess Jeff Younger was running for House Representative District 63.
Yes, sir.
And he was speaking about the issue of transgender rights and different things like that. Or I guess he got divorced, and his ex-wife, according to you guys, believe that his son was being forced to transition or something of that nature.
Yeah, something of that nature. That's definitely what Jeff Younger claims. So basically, I believe it started while his son was 8 or maybe before then. His ex-wife wanted to transition the child. He obviously was not in favor of that. And based on his testimony, he says that his son was not in favor of that either. And it really brings into the broader question of, well, regardless of whether an 8-year-old says that they want to be transitioned, is that really consent? Does an 8-year-old have consent to, or have the ability to give consent on something as drastic as transitioning into a quote unquote another gender? So it's a really it's an interesting question, one that a lot of people have been asking here in Texas and I guess all over the nation.
There is an episode of 60 Minutes. I think it was 60 Minutes Australia. If you haven't seen this
I don't think I
segment,
have.
well, basically there was a young person, a young man, who told his mother, "Mom, I feel like I'm a girl,"
Mm.
and basically began women's hormones. And then a couple years later, after being on hormones quite extensively, said to the mom that no longer felt no longer felt like a girl and wanted to detransition back to being
A
a
boy.
boy. But by that time, had major hormonal issues and stuff like that, and so it
Yeah.
was a big controversy.
Yeah.
And
And I would say that's exactly why we wanted to talk about this issue at UNT because of things like that. Our goal was never to ostracize anybody or make somebody feel bad. It was to have an honest, intellectual conversation about an issue that affects a lot of people. And you bring up this story from Australia, and it's true. That is the reality for some people, where they decide, at a very young age to go through this process of transitioning, and it turns out to be something they regret in the future, or something they at least want to switch back to, right? Detransition, but that's not always available to people, right? Sometimes if you go too far, there's no going back. It's permanent, you know. And that's why we bring up the question of, okay, we have these kids here, and um, they might feel one way one day, another way another day, right? Is it okay to let these kids transition like this? Is it okay for parents to advocate and endorse that kind of behavior, or even force that upon a child? We simply wanted to have a conversation about the issue, and that's what we were doing at that March event with Jeff Younger, who, I mean, you could say he definitely has experience that I don't have in the issue, and I'm sure he could provide some level of insight on the controversial topic.
well, we have Ryan in um, studio too. Something I had to ask Ryan real quick is, so Leah Thomas, the NCAA swimmer, basically transitioned from male to female
Hmm.
and shattered all kind of records as a UPenn swimmer.
Hmm.
Just a couple days ago, the world's leading body of elite athletes.
FINA. Well, FINA was the organization. They handle all the international swimming um, rules and regulations, and their decision on the subject, which is a touchy subject, and it's hard to navigate around from a athleticism perspective, and you have both sides of the argument, of course, in every argument. Their decision has been they are going to it if you are going to participate in the women's swimming division and you are transgender, you need to have finished your transition by the age of 13, I believe. I think it was 13. It was either 13 or 16, but I'm pretty sure it was 13. And then they are going to have a open division for anybody to compete in. So it looks like they're going to have three divisions. They'll have a straight men's, a straight women's, and then the open where anybody can compete.
So transgender issues are really being discussed on college campuses and in society in general.
Absolutely.
And I think one thing I wanted to say is that I have a lot of friends that are transgender. I went to a pretty progressive college on the East Coast, Princeton Theological Seminary, and I've encountered a lot of transgender people. And some people have said, and somebody, a really important progressive leader here on campus, have said that the Young Conservative Texas chapter of UNT does not believe that transgender people should exist. That this event was to basically discriminate against them, and then there are people calling for you guys' banning and removal. What would you say to the people who say, well, really what you're saying is that transgender people shouldn't exist, and that they should be removed from campus or something of that nature. What would you
Yeah.
say?
Well, I would say that first and foremost, that's a absurd statement, or at least at the bare minimum, disingenuous. We don't we don't think that transgender people shouldn't exist, but we definitely believe that it's a topic worth talking about on campus, right? Especially when you're talking about kids. And that was the main point of this event. And that's why I say it's disingenuous because the event wasn't about transgender people in general. It was about children and whether or not it's okay for them to be pursuing such a radical change. You know, I mean, they're not even allowed to get tattoos, but we're going to say that they can undergo hormone therapy. Regardless of how you feel about the topic, it's definitely one that's controversial and worth talking about, especially with everything going on with Leah Thomas and the whole 9 yards, right? So that's why we brought it up. Of course, you know, our goal isn't to, you know, eradicate transgender people or something ridiculous like that. We want to have honest conversations about it and figure out what would be the best way to move forward regarding this issue, you know?
So Stephen, you mentioned something a little earlier today before the podcast about Attorney General Ken Paxton and
Yeah.
Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, who have come out and basically said that there should be criminal liability for
Exactly.
parents that forcibly transition their children or something of that nature. Can you?
Yeah, well, I think it's if they transition their children, period. They came out saying that childhood transitioning is child abuse, something that shouldn't be allowed, and something that they believe you should wait till 18 before you make that decision. Um, and I think that highlights again that this is a conversation that we should be having, and simply having the conversation doesn't mean that we hate anybody or feel any particular hostility towards that group of people, but it is an issue that it concerns children, and there's so many cases where these kids, you know, they'll transition and at a young age, right? 13, 14, maybe even younger than that, they'll transition and maybe their parents support it and endorse it and help them do it. And then later on in life, you know, they turn 20 or 22 or maybe even sooner than that. They decide, well, you know what? This is actually not the decision that I wanted to make or I want to pursue any longer. And now they can't revert back. It's a permanent change. And they did it while they were a juvenile. While they were in their youth. So the question is, you know, kids aren't even allowed to drink. They're not allowed to get tattoos, things like that. But we're going to say that they can pursue such a radical and drastic change to their body. It's definitely a discussion we should have, especially after the testimony of these people who regret it and now their lives are forever changed.
So getting back to Jeff Younger
Mhm.
for a second. So some people here on campus basically have raised the issue of Jeff Younger not paying child support. So basically the narrative is this, that Jeff Younger lost parental
Mm-hmm.
custody of his child because failed to pay child support. And no longer, if you're not going to pay for your child's support, you lose rights, parental. I mean, you admit that's not good to not pay child
Yeah.
support, right?
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah, you should probably do that.
Even if you don't support exactly everything, but
Perhaps.
maybe you can earmark certain money for certain things, but like basic necessities. Okay, so they raised that issue. One thing I wanted to ask you is about the issue of doxing. We talked about this.
Sure.
So one thing, I'll tell you this. I was really concerned about your safety, my friend. One of the reasons why I didn't want you to do this event and talk to you about that before was not to censor your free speech. I wouldn't have you on the show today if I wanted to censor you. But the issue of the safety of the campus were there outside Antifa groups going to come on campus, cause a ruckus,
Yeah.
and they did, and it was really bad. They just caused a ruckus, shouted your speakers down.
Yeah.
You put a lot of people in danger. It was pretty scary. But not only that, I guess according to what you're saying is that somebody's going around campus or around the Denton area spray painting your personal information?
Yeah, yeah. So earlier this summer, that did happen on Fry Street. Somebody spray painted my physical address to where I live with the intention of getting people to go there. I'm assuming not to drop off presents, you know. But yeah, it's a huge issue, and it really started bad leading up to this Jeff Younger event that we were having back in March. They started really attacking us just for hosting it.
I actually had an op-ed published recently on the issue of protesting in front of Supreme Court justices' homes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I just thought there should be a buffer zone. I don't think it is appropriate for protesters to be in front of the home of a Supreme Court justice. Like Brett Kavanaugh was actually threatened with murder from one of these type kind of protesters.
Yeah.
And I think that that's off limits to this doxing to your personal information. Okay, let's agree to disagree agreeably, right? But
Yeah.
not threatening your life. There's violent threats being made against you and Kelly, the former leader of the group. That's totally inappropriate. And I wanted to have you come on for that reason. But also, we started getting emails as students here at UNT from the president of UNT, basically slamming you as a group.
Yeah.
And I wanted immediately for you to have a voice. In fact, as soon as I got the email from the president of the school, I contacted you. I said, "Man, have you saw this? You guys were severely, I would
Yeah.
say, persecuted by the school
Well,
administration."
absolutely, absolutely. And this was before the event even happened. So leading up to the event, the controversy really sparked after Kelly, the former chairman, was harassed at the library while she was printing out flyers for this event. And the students started throwing slurs at her and hurling insults and whatnot. And she posted about it online saying, "Hey, this is totally inappropriate. I'm simply, making these flyers." That's when the controversy really started. And before the event even happened, here we got the president of the university sending out an email to every single student. What, 44,000 students go to UNT, right? Every single student getting an email saying that, oh, well, the beliefs of these people are totally abhorrent and you shouldn't listen to them, basically. And totally slandering our group. He didn't say us by name, but it's obvious he was talking about us, especially with the emails that came afterwards. And he addressed us by name after the event once he started getting pushback from, I guess, the campus. So, yeah, no, we received no support from the administration. And that's especially concerning because in a lot of ways it fans the flame, when the president of the university comes out against a student group saying that we hold abhorrent views. We were simply talking about childhood transitioning, something Abbott's talked about, Ken Paxton's talked about. We come on campus and say, well, we're going to host a speaker that might know a little bit more than us, and we'll have a Q&A on the issue. And the president goes, well, that's abhorrent. You're not even allowed to talk about that kind of stuff, right? How do you think that would make the student body react? How do you think that would make other people in the area react, especially if they think that we're coming, like you asked earlier, that we think that transgender people shouldn't exist and we're extremely hostile towards this group? People are going to assume that we are bad actors with bad faith, not trying to engage in a serious conversation on the issue, and then they attack us as they did leading up to the event, at the event, and after the event.
Well, I want to say something that I haven't told you behind the scenes. When I ran into you in the library the day before the event, I asked you, do you think that this is the best, event for the campus? Because it's going to cause a lot of ruckus.
Yeah.
But then you responded back to me that day or something that you had went and talked to your group, and you just felt that your free speech was being suppressed. And I thought about that. I want to let you know, Stephen, that profoundly affected me because I do not want to suppress your freedom of speech. I wouldn't have you on the show today, okay? If I said, man, if I implied that your free speech was, somehow going to be infringed upon, I'm a big First Amendment supporter, advocate. At the Mayburn School of Journalism, you walk in there, they have a poster, gigantic door-sized poster, you know, basically with the First Amendment on there. You know, the free speech shall not be infringed upon. Okay, and let me read that text, actually. I'm going to read the First Amendment. I know some people have never even read the First Amendment, but it says, Congress shall not make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or the press or the right of the people to peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. There's a lot of things there: freedom of religion, free speech, freedom of the press, the freedom to assemble. Stephen, you guys assembled?
Yeah.
I know people are saying that you guys shouldn't even exist.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And you have a right to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Okay, these are constitutional rights that you have.
Yeah, especially at a public university that is funded by our government, by our taxpayers.
Now, here's an issue,
ways.
though. But we can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater, right? There's limits
Absolutely.
to freedom of speech. We can't slander. We can't violate copyright laws, okay? So I think what the argument is from the left is that you guys shouldn't exist as a group because you're promoting hate speech.
Yeah.
So, but what you're really ultimately saying is that you believe that transgender people have a right to exist, but the minors, you question people under 18 being forcibly transitioned or...
Yeah. And I will say my personal opinion on the transgender issue above 18 is, I mean, I don't know if it's a lifestyle I would necessarily endorse or promote, but I'm not gonna infringe upon your freedoms. You can do as you please. With kids, it's very different though. And that's why we wanted to have this Jeff Younger event, because, you know, kids don't have the capacity to give consent on many, many things, right? And it is my belief that transitioning is one of those things. But regardless of my belief, we should be allowed to have a conversation on the issue. I can argue my side, you can argue your side, but we do so in a civil manner to where it's a productive conversation and an intellectual one that's stimulating and one that we can maybe actually find some solutions or common ground on, right? But when you get students like this who maybe are propagandized by the president or whatever is going on social media, and they think, well, we got to tear down this event because they hate us and they're trying to, like, I know one student said we wanted to kill transgender people or something completely absurd like that. That's how you get this backlash, and that's how we start getting censored. We're not even allowed to have the conversation anymore. And I totally do remember that conversation I had with you, and your concerns were good concerns to have. There was a lot of pushback online for us trying to host this event. But the point is, you know, transgender stuff is not really my big issue. The point is that there shouldn't be an issue that we can't address, especially one that is this important and this prevalent in today's society. And if people want to shut you down for simply talking about it, well, then I'm going to stand up and say, well, no. We should be able to talk about it. Even if it was someone on the left that wanted to have a serious conversation about something that maybe I was personally entangled with or I cared about deeply, I would say absolutely. And I would stand up and be like, yeah, let them speak. Let's hear them out. Because I don't believe that countering free speech, to do that, you shut down speech. You just do it with good ideas, right? If there's a bad thing that's circulating, you counter that with a good thing. You don't shut that down and say, well, you're just not allowed to talk about it. That is that's not how this society started. And I believe that if we go that way, it's how this society will end.
Absolutely. I want to ask you a question. The Young Democratic Socialists of America have a chapter here on campus.
Yes, they do.
Okay. I propose a debate to come on the podcast, the Lee Enoch Show, America and UNT's most controversial podcast, to come on this show and let's debate the issues.
I would love to do that. And we have always stated, us at YCT, UNT, we have always stated that we would love to have a debate on any issue. So if there's anybody out there that's listening to this right now, you go to UNT, maybe you're part of that club or another club that doesn't particularly align with us, please reach out. We would love to have a debate. We would love to host that because that is the point. That's what you should be doing on college campuses. We should be promoting things like that. Let's get out there and talk about it. Let's do so civilly. Let's figure out how people feel about it. Let's get the facts out there. I want everybody to be represented. Absolutely.
Yeah, I want to be the host of that. I want to bring you on the show with the leaders of the progressive left here on campus or in Denton area and have a cordial debate, a real debate on the issues, maybe these issues or others. And I want to move away from the transgender issue for a moment and ask you a couple questions about you guys as a group. One thing, I am very libertarian in my perspective on things. Economic liberty, I just had something posted or published against socialism. I am
Sure.
a fierce proponent of individual and economic liberty. But I'm also a Christian. So I've struggled because Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged, and she wrote the Fountainhead, was a militant atheist, opposed Christianity. Okay, and William F. Buckley, the founder of the National Review, and wrote the book God and Man at Yale, basically thought she was a crackpot because her arguments against the existence of God were bad. But there's been a tradition in the libertarian movement for personal liberty. So basically a person has a right over their own body.
Mhm.
Okay, now, what would you say as a conservative to a person that is basically says, look, I'm over 18, I want to transition, okay, and it's my body, I have a right over my own body. Would you say that they have a right over their own body, or should a government control a person from transitioning, or the issue will segue into abortion?
Yeah, and I would love to talk about abortion too. I think it's one of those things where it's not that the government should intervene and tell them to stop, but I don't think it's something that should be endorsed or advocated for by the state. And I personally wouldn't endorse or advocate that for a person above 18 either, simply because from the research that I've done and seen, I think there's a couple issues prominent in that community, and I don't know if it's a great lifestyle to pursue. That's just my opinion, though. I'm not going to say that you can't. If you want to go ahead and do it, go ahead. But personally, I would say, well, what makes you want to do that? Why are you feeling this way? And is there something else going on that maybe you're repressing? I find that a lot of people going through that are obviously confused if they want to transition. And I don't want to talk about it too much because it's not an area I'm like a professional on. I would simply say that I would not totally endorse it, but if it's something you want to pursue, you're free to make your own decision. Of course, after you're 18, though. Before then, I would say no way, and absolutely, the state should be involved in preventing child transitioning. I don't think that should be allowed because of the potential negative consequences that come from that.
So getting back to the issue of abortion,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So obviously, this is a big controversy right now because Roe versus Wade may be overturned by the Supreme Court, and that was the leak of the document
About a month or two ago, right?
Yep. Ago. So the issue of abortion is in the news.
Absolutely.
Okay? You as a conservative, the leader of this organization, what do you think about abortion? Do you believe that a woman has a right to choose for her own body?
Yeah. I don't like how that's framed. I've never liked how they say pro-choice or pro-life. I think it should be pro-life or pro-death, honestly. When it comes to abortion, no, I do not believe that a woman should necessarily have the right to abort their baby. And I feel about two ways about this. The religious side of me says that in every case, this shouldn't be allowed, right? even in these cases of the most horrendous, right? Like rape and things like that. That's one of those very scary topics, especially because you have a victim and a perpetrator, right? This woman was attacked, and something horrible happened as a product of that, and she needs to be cared for and given all the support in the world that we can possibly give her as a society. But now you have a new situation, right? Now you have a woman and a child, right? And the child ultimately is innocent in this case. So the religious side of me would say you still shouldn't abort that baby, and that if you don't want to carry that child, or you don't want to have that child after you give birth, adoption and other things are open to you to pursue that route instead. The statesman side of me would say, in cases of rape, if the mother were to
Incest.
die, incest, I would say, you know what, maybe that shouldn't be abridged by the state necessarily. I'd be open to an argument on that just because it's such a horrible situation already. But no, ultimately, no, I don't think abortion should be allowed, period. I don't think it's okay. These kids, they can't be advocated for. No, they can't advocate for themselves, I should say. And we're the only ones that can do it for them. And they matter. I mean, I've heard testimony from hundreds of people who, their parents did consider abortion. They were going through a hard time, right? But they didn't do it, and now they have a happy, beautiful family, right? And they're pursuing a career and a lifestyle and a life, period, and I think that's amazing in itself. And I think abortion comes from degeneracy. I think it's done nothing but hurt the society in many ways. And I would say no, absolutely not. I am pro-life.
Well, that's
all the
probably
way.
one of the strongest pro-life defenses I've heard.
Okay.
And what would you say to a person that says this? So wait, Stephen, you're saying that the state should force a woman who's been impregnated, who's pregnant, to carry their baby to term, that they have basically the government has a control over a woman's body.
I think that's a bad way to frame it, because it's not like the state impregnated the woman, and in 90% of these cases of abortion, it's simply because they went out and they had a good night, man or woman, and then now a woman is pregnant, and they decide, well, this isn't actually something that I want yet, or something like that, whatever the argument is. In cases like that, just like anything else in life, if you eat too much food, there's a consequence for that, right? And that's not the state saying, well, now you have to be fat. It's, hey, you did this action, and now this is the result of that action. It's the same thing with getting pregnant. You engaged in that kind of behavior, and this is what happened as a result. And more importantly than that, the reason the state should be involved in some capacity is because now there's 3 parties involved. It's not just 2 anymore. And it's not just about you anymore, because now there's a living, not breathing, but there's a living person inside of you, right? So that's why it's like, well, should the state not protect that person to protect this person instead? That doesn't make a lot of sense, especially when they actually engaged and committed the action and the child hasn't done anything wrong, period. So that's where I'd say I wouldn't look at it as the state necessarily forcing them to carry the baby, but they definitely shouldn't endorse or advocate aborting the baby. Do you get what I'm saying?
So, as a Christian,
Yeah.
for me, my faith in Jesus Christ is the most important thing. Okay? Staunchly pro-life. I in no way want to communicate anything differently. But as the host of the show, I want to try to give all the different opinions out there. But my faith in Jesus Christ is the most important thing. I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. He died on the cross for our sins, was buried, and he rose again on the 3rd day. We need to repent of our sins and place our faith in Jesus Christ. He's the only way to heaven. I will not compromise my Christian faith for anybody.
Amen.
And I want to say this. I've thought about this in the last couple weeks. I am not a secular conservative, okay? I firmly believe in Christ. and I want to affirm the Christian faith. And I'm torn in one way, though, is that if somebody like, like the incest or assault of a person, and now they got to carry the baby to term, but then you make a very powerful argument. What about that child?
Yeah.
Because what the left wants to say is that that's no longer a child, that is a human being created in the image of God. Okay, so I'm with you on that issue. So I just want to be careful that to the audience out there that listens to the Lee Enoch show, that I am very much pro-life.
Yeah.
And I believe in Christ. I'm just bringing up the issue. There's also a little libertarianism in me that the government's going to control. So basically, not only that, it's the parent shouldn't probably, the mother shouldn't, the pregnant mother shouldn't smoke or, do other things that would be unhealthy for her baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things here. So you're saying that the pregnant mother has a moral obligation to be healthy for that child and bring that baby to term. And what they do afterwards, after the baby is born, they give up to adoption or whatever. But and I want to catch myself. I caught myself saying something. I said, give it up for adoption. No, the child is a he or a she created in the image of God. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a it. It's not. This is not a philosophical concept. We're talking about a human being created in the image of God.
Yeah, just like me or you.
So you're saying that child should be given a healthy upbringing in the pregnancy stages, right?
Well, absolutely. Yeah, I'm simply saying that the mother should not pursue an abortion, and of course, on a moral level, they should maintain their health for the child. Absolutely. Probably don't do a whole lot of smoking or drinking while you're pregnant. Absolutely, yeah.
Stephen, before we close, I want you to give the UNT community basically hope. What message, what positive message does your group, the Young Conservative of Texas, have for the UNT community and for the state of Texas? What is your ultimate aim, and what is your message of hope for this state in a very dark time?
Yeah. I would say that, these are dark times. There's a lot of bad things going on. The economy is in jeopardy. There's a lot of social issues that are dividing this nation. A lot of negative things happening, of course. I would say that if we can come together and talk about the issues, engage in a faithful way, right? Let's not assume that one person is the enemy or the bad guy. Let's not assume that there's hate or, as the left would say, bigotry involved. If we can come together and have a serious conversation, especially as we approach the fall semester, I think that could be a way to turn this around. I think our side is massively misunderstood, and I think their side is potentially misunderstood. I'm sure there's a lot of things that we've never been able to hear from them. And I think moving forward, if we can change that one aspect of this whole dichotomy on campus, we can ease the tension and we can start to have some really productive conversations that this country needs to have that can maybe benefit everybody and not just UNT,
Stephen, you were talking about another group that you've been involved in.
Yes.
Tell me about that before we close. What you're not only you're involved in the Young Conservatives of Texas.
Yeah, so I actually took over another organization. It's a nonprofit based out of Dallas. It's called Keep Dallas Safe. And I'm glad you mentioned this because this is actually an issue that's really nonpartisan. So our mission is to address the crime and homelessness in Dallas. We work with OHS, we work with the police department, and we do a lot of things for homeless people in Dallas. And that's what I've been doing as of now. I'm the executive director of the organization. And I would highly encourage, if anybody's interested in learning more about the group, go to keepdallassafe.org. You can sign up for our newsletter and follow us on social media and stuff like that. We need to address that issue. Crime is skyrocketing in Dallas, and so is homelessness. And even if you don't live in Dallas, it's coming out to the suburbs, like my own suburb of Carrollton, which is right above Dallas, right? So this issue is very prominent in the DFW area, and we're looking at finding serious solutions to address it. Not just a lot of people would say that conservatives would say, "Oh, we'll just lock up the homeless." Well, that's not always the answer, or maybe that's never the answer, right? We're curious about finding the solution, and we're making a lot of progress and working with a lot of big people in Dallas to make that happen. So if you're interested in learning more, please go to keepdallassafe.org, and you'll find out all about us.
Well, thank you, Stephen. This is Lee Enochs, and this is the Lee Enochs Show, America and UNT's most controversial podcast. I want to tell you this, that we're living in really hard days. Gas prices are skyrocketing. Inflation is hurting America. I believe there are answers that conservatives can provide for the community now. I'm very pleased to have you on our show today, Stephen. I want to do a debate. So the leader of the Young Progressives, the Young Democratic Socialists of America, is invited on this show to debate you in the future. Any other person from the left that wants to come on the show and do a debate in love, is welcome. You speak the truth in love. God bless you. God bless UNT.